Hi there, I'm Budda and you're watching Dr. Guitar, a show for all you guitarists out there. In today's episode, I'm giving you a really great tip that you probably already know. You probably already know how to play, but you don't know how to use it. Hopefully, this episode will help you develop it. It's the diminished chord tricks. It basically has two different tricks that you can use on different approaches to music. First of all, let me thank my dear patrons who help this show being possible. Thank you so much for helping and for supporting the show. If you want to become a patron and support the show, just go to my Patreon link. It's very simple, follow the steps, super easy. Or you can also support the show by donating to the tip jar via PayPal. It's a very simple action. Another very simple way of supporting the show is by subscribing and clicking the bell notification, giving it the thumbs up if you like the episode. This will help YouTube to suggest the video to other people. If you want to have some guitar lessons with me, just send me an email or a direct message via Instagram or Facebook and we'll deal with it from there. Visit my website, there's a lot of merchandising there, but also information of the pedal boards I'm using, gear I use, my shows when COVID stops and I start having shows again. T-shirts, mugs, CDs, my band CDs, pen drives with music, a lot of stuff. It's also a great way of supporting the channel. Hope you liked the episode. Here's the diminished chords tricks. What is a diminished chord? Well, a diminished chord is basically a chord with all minor third intervals. Usually chords have interchangeable flat third and perfect third, or minor third and major third. So, for example, in a C chord, you have the notes C, E, G, and B. C to E is a major third. E to G is a minor third. G to B is a major third. It's major, minor, major third. In a diminished chord, it's always minor third. And this gives us a really great trick with the diminished chord. So a diminished chord will be, if we're playing C diminished chord, it will be C, then E flat, minor third, then G flat, and then A. All minor thirds, which makes the chord able to be moved in flat thirds, minor thirds. It's the same thing. You can move it from flat third to flat third and you're always playing the same chord. So basically this means there are only 3 different diminished chords. Why? Because if a chord has 4 different notes, in the case of C, you have C, E flat, G flat, and A. It means C diminished is exactly the same chord as E flat diminished, exactly the same chord as G flat diminished, and exactly the same chord as A diminished. So you have one chord for 4 different notes. If there's 12 different notes and you have 4 combinations of 4, so you only have 3 different diminished chords. There's 3 easy ways of playing a fully diminished chord. I mean, 4 notes diminished chord. This is one of the shapes, which I like to relate with the B chord, in this case, so the A-shaped B7 chord, but just changing the root note. And what I told you, you can change the chord in a minor third to a minor third interval, which means 1.5 tone, 1.5 step above or below. It's the same thing. It sounds like this. And I'm back on C. Okay, then there's another option of playing the same chord. Let's start not on C, but let's start on C for it to be more obvious. So this is the C diminished with the root note on A string, C diminished with the root note on E string, and of course we can play the same rule of 1.5 step higher or lower. Okay, and then there's the diminished shape with root note on the D string. Here's the C. For those who follow me on Patreon, I will add the tabs for what I'm playing here. So if you want to get the tabs, please follow me on Patreon and support the show. Here's the first trick of the diminished is exactly this one, is playing the diminished chord having this sound. And if I'm using it, for example, in the blues, so I just used the trick of the diminished and moving it up. Going back to G again. So this is a very useful trick that you can use to create movement when and while playing a diminished chord. Let's go through the diminished chord arpeggio because it has a really funny shape because it's always flat thirds. So you can go like if we're playing a C diminished, C, E flat, and then the shape is you change to the next string 1 fret higher. When you get to the B string, it interrupts because of the B string obstruction, so it should be this note, it will be this one. But then to the E string, it's this and this. So it's a cool arpeggio, very spooky sounding, so it's very mysterious. It always reminds me of Dracula. I don't know why, but it always reminds me of an enchanted castle or something like that. Don't really know why, but it's what I think about this. Spiders and spider webs, bats, all those crazy, spooky stuff. So the diminished arpeggio, you can play it wherever, and you can play this shape, or you can start with your third finger. It's exactly the same arpeggio, but different shape. Well, it's not exactly the same because I started in a different note, but if I started in C, let's do it slowly. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, here, this is the arpeggio. But you're probably thinking, why the heck do I want to know the diminished arpeggio and the diminished chords? Well, there's a great trick. There's a lot of tricks, but the trick I'm explaining today is that the diminished chord is almost a dominant chord. So you can substitute any dominant chord with a diminished played either on the third of the dominant chord, the 5, or the 7, the flat 7. Or if you want it, on the flat 9 or the flat 2nd. So what I mean by this is that this C diminished chord can substitute a G chord, a G7 chord, a G sharp 7 chord. And in a blues scenario, for example, every chord is dominant, so you can replace every of the dominant chords by its substitute diminished, okay? And you'll have a great sound, as I used in the intro. You have an exotic, a little more exotic sound when playing on top of a dominant. So if I'm playing a blues, for example, in G, I can replace my G chord either from a G sharp diminished, or, of course, if I go up in flat thirds, I can replace it for a B diminished, for a D diminished, for an F diminished. It's basically the same chord. So if I play the arpeggio, I can play this arpeggio on top of the 1 chord. And it's greatly used when going from one chord to the next. So if I'm going from G to C7, I can play like, because I'm always kind of half step away from the right note of the next chord. So have a listen. 1, 2. So I'm using a lot of passages. Some sound kind of strange, but when you solve it, it all sounds great. So for example, if I'm going from the 5 to the 4, I can play the diminished and end up on the arpeggio of the 4 chord. 1, 2, 3, and... Conversely, while I'm going from the 1 to the 5, I can also play the arpeggio. And land on flat 7 of the chord. Or on any other note. For example, I can start on the flat second of the... I can start on A flat diminished, which is one of the diminished that can replace or substitute the G7, and I will land on the 1 of the 5. Listen. I will do the substitutions from the 5 to the 4, and then when I'm going back from the 1 to the 5, I will do the substitution 2. And you can and should use that alongside with the pentatonic. So I'm demonstrating really obviously that I'm using the arpeggio, but I can use like a pentatonic lick and then twist it a little, introducing a few notes of the diminished arpeggio. So the diminished arpeggio is super great with dominant chords, but not only in blues. I just gave you the example of a blues because the blues has all dominant chords. But if I'm playing something like a 2-5-1, or a 2-5-1-6, where I have the 6 being dominant and going to the minor second, I can replace and substitute the A7 by a diminished C sharp, E, G, or B flat. Okay, so I can play, example, the diminished arpeggio from C sharp and land on a D. Or I can land on the flat 7 for example. You see me using it, and I can be playing not even a jazzy stuff. I can be playing kind of a bluesy, major blues. I use it there kind of disguised, but I think you start to recognize the tone of it. It's up to your imagination. Well, that's it. I hope you have liked the show. I hope this has been helpful to you. If you haven't done it yet, please subscribe to the YouTube channel and click the bell notification. Leave the thumbs up if you liked the episode. It's a great way of supporting the channel. Also, if you want to become a patron, just go to the Patreon link and follow the steps. It's super easy, or you can contribute to the tip jar on PayPal. If you want to have some guitar lessons with me via Skype, just send me a direct message on Instagram or Facebook, or send me an email and we'll deal with it from there. Keep in mind, all my patrons have access to the tabs for the exercises we played here and for the arpeggios and the chords. So if you want to have access to it, just become a patron. It's super, super simple. Thank you so much. I hope you liked it. We'll see each other next week. Bye-bye.